Instead of good position?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to record you going around?
That should be good. So, like y'all said, or like I was introduced, I'm a student from Williams Baptist. I'm in my final week of my pre-clinicals, which is where I'll go to student teach. I'll do that in Pocahontas, Arkansas. So part of this program is I'm just coming to teach y'all a lesson. I'm a secondary social studies major, so I'm going to teach history. And so that's why you're getting a history lesson from me and not a health or PE. It worked out that way. But like I said, it'll be easy. It'll benefit you in any of your history classes. It's not specific to anything. And I tried to make it simple. But also, you're going to learn something from me. It's okay to stick on the smartboard on
Yeah,
the
that's
wall.
fine.
Okay.
Yes. If you can stick it on the little gray part at the top, that'll be perfect.
All right. So all of y'all are going to have this colorful thing first, and that's all you'll need for right now. So if you just want to separate it and have something to write with in a second. See this colorful part?
Anybody need a pencil? Me.
I've also got a pen that can do more.
Anybody else need a pencil? All right.
All right, so before we start, I have to teach y'all how to do something we're going to do later. Have y'all ever done stand up, hand up, pair up?
No.
That's just a way to group with a partner. So what you do is you'll stand up from your chair. If y'all want to do it, we'll go through it.
Okay.
So let's stand up. All right, then you're going to raise your hand. You're going to find someone you're not by, and whenever you get to them, you're just going to high five, and that's your partner.
Okay, come on, let's go.
You can use me too if you don't have anyone.
Miss Emily and Daisy, you guys get together. Okay.
Everybody got someone?
Emily and Daisy, you guys are partners.
All right, so just for the practice, tell them your favorite Christmas song. I'm gonna do it with y'all. Yeah, that's good. Cheers. That's a good one. My favorite is the first Noel by anyone. I just like it. All right, and you can go back to your seats with that. Like I said, we'll do that again later. I just had to teach that so that way we don't have that confusion later. All right. So first I'm going to tell y'all two little stories. Pull this down so y'all can hear me. If you can't hear me, just raise your hand and tell me to talk louder. I don't talk very loud. So I grew up in central Arkansas, in Conway, Bologna area. It's near Little Rock and North Little Rock. But so I grew up kind of the city, kind of in the midst of stuff. Depending on where you go, I was in the city. So whenever I went shopping for a Christmas tree 2 years ago, before I moved up to Pocahontas, I went to all kinds of stores. Went to Tractor Supply, Walmart, Target, Sam's. All of them, and I couldn't find any, or they were, just ridiculously expensive. Couldn't find one that made me happy, that I wanted to use, so I just kept going around. Ended up messing around too long and had to go fishing with one of my buddies out at Lake Conway. So we get out there, and, we're just fishing all day. We're on a boat, not really catching a whole lot. It's cold. And finally I get one, and it's, it just feels like it's something really big. And so, I'm reeling it in, and it's just a fight. I'm pulling it. Finally get it. I think I'm about to have this huge fish. Ends up just being a tree branch, and spending all my day, looking at Christmas trees. I'm like, whatever. I'll use this Charlie Brown looking tree, and we'll make it work. All right. That's different than my grandma, who grew up in the country. She had 150 acres that her and my grandpa lived on. They lived out in the middle of nowhere. So whenever they needed their Christmas trees, they'd load up on their four-wheeler. They'd get a trailer hooked up. They'd have to go through 5 separate gates on their property to get out where they have all these pine trees. They're big old tall pine trees. And so they'd spend, a few hours walking around looking at them. My grandma would find one that looked, like it would fit inside, and it was, fluffy enough, and it wasn't missing sections from deer or whatever. and my grandpa would have to cut it down with a saw. He was old-fashioned, he would not buy a chainsaw, and so he made my little old grandma pull those, you know, those old-fashioned saws with the two handles on both sides you run. He'd make her pull those, and then they'd hook a string up, tie it to the four-wheeler, and pull it off till it fell over, and then they'd have to drive it all the way back to the house, through 5 gates, and then they'd put it up in the house and decorate it. So, I told y'all 2 stories. What are some similarities and differences? Turn to the person next to you and kind of tell them. So,
You two can turn to each other. You two.
Who?
yeah,
Who?
just some
Who?
similarities and differences.
Who too?
Between these 2 stories.
I'm trying to.
He said, what's the difference between his 2 stories?
I just gotta go to the bathroom now. I bet you won't let me go.
It's talking about different areas and a home team. And then in the other one, you was talking about
Hey, active listening, active listening. We on that this week.
Yeah.
He ain't say right now yet.
Yeah. If you want to, but I have to ask them.
Oh, we don't gotta write that.
No, you're good. Y'all have to write those down. We're about to just talk about them. All right. So who wants to raise their hand and tell me some similarities and differences?
Can I tell you a difference?
Yeah, what's up?
In one story you talking about you going fishing, and then the other one was Christmas.
Yeah.
Good job, Miss Man.
All right. Yeah.
A similarity is that both of them involve finding the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Good job.
Good job. Anyone else?
Nothing, no one else? Yeah. Anything else? Any more similarities or differences?
All right. So if no one has anyone else, the main differences that I wanted y'all to see was that one of them was a story about me, and the other one was a story about my grandparents. I made up the story about me because I don't really have any good Christmas tree ones. You know, I just went and bought one. But you know, it's really what my grandparents did for the longest time. Now they're old and they can't do that, so they bought, you know, just a plastic tree. But that's what they used to do. So that's the one about me was a primary source, and the one about my grandparents was going to be a secondary source. So that's why we've got these that we're about to work on. And on this left bubble, write in primary source, whatever you want to write.
So, you said the right bubble?
The left, I'm sorry, I was looking at
Oh, I'm
backwards.
sorry.
Either one's fine.
What you say?
And the black one on the left?
Yeah, and the one right here.
What we put on right
Primary.
So yeah, if you're looking at it, it's your left. I need to look at it the way y'all are looking at it. It's going to cause confusion. And then the other one, write secondary. If you got them backwards, it's fine.
Oh, primary.
Y'all ignore my beautiful picture. Any of y'all know anything about primary and secondary sources? Any descriptions or anything? What do you know?
Primary is like the main one, secondary is the
Alright. So he said primary is like the main one and secondary is like from the main one, kind of. Anyone else have anything they know? It's alright if you don't, I bet to tell you, so just wanted to see if anyone did. Alright, so like I said, that first story, since it was about me, it was going to be a primary. So one of the things you can write in one of the primary bubbles, the red ones, is you can write I statements or firsthand. I'm going to write I statements because I remember better that way, so you know if they're saying a lot of, I did this, I went and saw this, I went and, you know, like that, or we, but mainly they're going to be I sources relating to the person. So just in one of your bubbles, write I statements. If you go outside of the bubble, it's fine. I probably will too in a minute. Alright, so if I statements go with primary, what do you think goes with secondary? They're opposites. Yeah. So you've got your he, she, they statements. They're going to be about other people. I said my grandma, and then I said she or he, and I was talking about someone else. So on our secondary side, we're going to write he, she, they questions or statements. Alright, and the second thing about primary sources is they're going to be created at the time or about the time the person experienced it. So you can just write created at time. So where that's going to be a little different is obviously I'm not recording that from the time it didn't just happen to me and I'm recording it. It, you know, theoretically it happened 3 months ago or 2 years ago is what I said. So I'm telling about the time whenever it was made, and that's whenever the event happened, so it's predating at that time because I went through it. So that's what that second one's going to be. So any guesses on what secondary would be compared with that?
If primary is created during that time, what do you think secondary is?
It's not
Past
created.
tense.
Not past.
It's not created during that time. It was created in the past.
So it's created after the event because, you know, like I wasn't there when my grandparents did that. So yeah, I mean it is kind of past tense, but it doesn't always have to be. Because I could be telling a story about how one of y'all walked down the hall to go to lunch and came back, and that's not really past, it's kind of present. But yeah, so the second one is, I don't know how I just worded that, but I like it better than how I wrote it.
Present tense. I like it.
Yeah, it's just a event of something that happened to someone else. I wrote record of event, but
I like that one.
yeah.
So record,
Record of events. Oh, I wrote that on the wrong side. That's with secondary, not primary. Y'all watched me. Alright, so the third thing with primary is going to be that it's an original document or object. So under primary over here on the third one, we're going to write, it's an original document or object.
Original document.
Yeah, original document or object. Alright, so if it's not gonna be that original, is everyone ready? I don't wanna speed too far from y'all. Give y'all a second, y'all are still writing some. Alright, so if primary is going to be an original document, what can we guess maybe a secondary document would, or a secondary source would be? If it's not the original document or object. So it's gonna be one step removed from being the primary, so we're gonna write one step removed on secondary for our third circle.
One step removed.
Yeah, one step removed. Alright, we just got one more for both of them. I accidentally put 5 circles on y'all's paper, we're just gonna do 4.
No, it said one step removed.
On which side?
On secondary.
Secondary.
Alright, and the final thing we're going to write with primary is it's going to be a written, oral, or relic. So it's either going to be written like someone's going to write like a diary or autobiography, or it'll be oral like, you know, me telling y'all the story about me going, or it'll be like a relic or image, you know, like a vase from ancient Egypt. So on primary, we're going to write either written, oral, or image, or relic. Oral is like it's told to you. So like how I told y'all about my story going out and ended up catching a branch, that's going to be oral.
And how you spell it, like O-R-A-L?
O-R-A-L, yes.
Like that.
And our secondary is not going to be opposite of this one this time. I'm going to give y'all a little longer to write and just go ahead and say that. Alright, and the last thing with secondary we're going to write is layers of analysis. So you're not just going to be able to look at it straightforward and understand, like when they're writing it, they've got some of their own beliefs they're adding on to the authors. So like I don't know exactly how my grandparents did it, so there's a lens I'm looking through to tell about their story. So there's going to be a layer of analysis is what we're going to write. Yeah?
How do you spell analysis?
Good question. I don't know if I spelt it right, but I spelt it A-N-A-L-Y-S-I-S.
Good job.
Cause you beat me.
Sorry, I didn't autocorrect that, but I think it's right. Alright. If y'all missed any, just raise your hand and I'll ask you real quick. Or I'll let you know, my bad. Alright, and whenever everyone's done, put your hand on your head. No rush if you're not, just whenever you get done, put your hand up here. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll help y'all. Okay, that's everyone. So in the middle, we're going to write what they both do. So they both provide info about the past, or information about the past. You can write info, it's shorter. So information from past. Because both of them, what I told y'all, it's going to be something from way back when. It was either about, you know, what I did 2 years ago or what my grandparents did until a few years ago. Alright. Next, they're both reliable and valid. So both reliable and valid. Alright, and our last one for that middle section, which is both, is they are both a record of an event. Alright, whenever you're done, just give me a thumbs up or something. Just let me know you're done. I think we got one more. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to repeat them all together so that way we can just make sure we understand. We're going to start with the primary ones, starting with the I statement. So after I'm going to say it, then y'all say it. So primary I statement.
Primary I statement.
Primary created at time of event.
Primary created at time of event.
Primary original document or object. And then primary is written, oral, or a relic.
Primary written, oral, or relic.
Alright, and now we're going to do secondary. So secondary is he, she, or they statements.
Secondary, he, she, they statement.
Secondary is a record of events.
Secondary, record of events.
And secondary is one step removed.
Secondary, one step removed.
And finally, secondary has layers of analysis.
Finally, secondary.
Alright, and then both are information from the past. Both are reliable and valid. And both record an event of the past. Alright, and that's the hard part. No. Alrighty. Let's see what I'm doing next. I'm gonna swap out my posters because I gotta write again. Now we're gonna divide them. We're gonna separate some sources and decide if we think they're primary or secondary. I'm gonna start first. We'll do them as a class. We'll do two, and then I'll do two, and you'll just work with the person next to you, and we'll do them all together. And then I've got a little mini project to do. Like I said, it's pretty simple, and that'll be the ones y'all got your paper on. Like I said, I'm gonna get this up here so we can do them together. Alright, so right now y'all aren't writing anything, I'll do all the writing.
What am I doing?
Right now you're just sitting there and I'm about to ask two sources and we're going to decide as a class if they're primary or secondary. So I meant to bring one of my textbooks from one of my classes, but I forgot, so I don't have it to show y'all, but I've got a textbook and it's called Baptist History, and that's a textbook. Do we think that's primary or secondary?
It's called what again?
It's called Baptist History. It's a textbook.
You said it's called, you said
Secondary.
Baptist?
Baptist History, yeah.
Baptist history.
Secondary.
Alright, raise your hand if you think it's primary. Alright, a few of y'all. And now raise your hand if you think it's secondary. Alright, why do you think it's primary, those that raise your hand? If you don't know, it's fine. This is the first one, so it's okay if y'all don't know and just guessing. You don't have to say anything, you're good. Alright, so if you think it's secondary, why do you think it's secondary?
I don't know how to explain.
Because it showed a record of events that happened in the past on like Baptist.
So yeah, it's just a textbook of, you know, how the Baptists moved over to America. I should have picked a better one. That's the only textbook I have this semester. But yeah, it's not, the author of that book did not experience, you know, the 1600s and the 2000s. So he's writing from an event he didn't experience, so that's why it is secondary. So textbooks are always going to be secondary. Alright, and the other one I've got that we're going to do as a class is a journal article about the elections of 2000. So who thinks it's primary?
Only one person think it's primary?
And who thinks it's secondary? Alright. So either side, primary or secondary, why do you think why? Yeah, I guess I should put it on the poster.
Go back to
I'm thinking secondary because one step is
Yeah, so you think it's secondary because one step is removed because they weren't active in the election process most likely. So yeah, it is secondary.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
It was primary because it's a journal, right? Well, you said a journal article.
It's a journal
okay,
article.
I thought you said journal writing.
No, I should have worded that better, but yeah, it's a journal article, so someone wrote it, but
Okay.
not about themselves. So it's going to be secondary. And I guess I'll give y'all a primary. I meant to. I wrote that one thinking it was primary too, but it's secondary.
You just taught us the answer.
I know. I'm just going to tell you an example of a primary. So like a primary source is going to be like a diary. Any of y'all have a diary or a journal or something you write every day in? I do. So yeah, like a primary example would be, change colors. We'll write Mr. E's journal. Or diary. I'll write diary. Not to confuse y'all. Alright, so now we're going to turn to someone next to us. Just get a partner real quick, or a group of three, just a few people. And the two that we're going to decide.
Emily, you want to come over here with us? I want to come over there and sit with you. Come on over here. Mr. Price, bring your chair. You want to get
Yeah, y'all can do a group.
Yeah, bring your chair, baby. Bring your chair. All right.
Alright, so the two that we're going to do as a group, I'll wait till y'all get seated and comfortable. So y'all don't have to write anything again for this one, we're just going to talk about it, but I want y'all to decide individually first.
Miss Price?
Yeah.
Come on up, baby. You say you don't have to write it.
Alright, can everyone hear me? Alright. So what we're going to do now is you don't have to write anything down, but with your group, you're going to decide if a World War II photograph is primary or secondary, and then if a drawing of a native tribe from Miss L's class is primary or secondary. So just talk amongst your group and decide, and then we'll open up as a class and put them.
So the World War II photo is secondary. And then the drawing of a native tribe in Miss Hill's place is it primary or secondary? Okay, so which one is primary?
Do you think the World War II photo is primary? So like the photo of a soldier.
I should move away from it. I'm trying to get past it.
How about the drawing of a native tribe?
So the first one is going to be a photo.
We should be discussing, those two options.
So we pick the second one. Miss L's class. You think that'd be primary? Y'all got an answer yet? Y'all agree and you disagree? Hey, it's okay if you disagree. Yeah, I was wrong earlier, so we learned
I
that.
could be wrong, but I think it's primary. So what do you think about the drawing of a native tribe?
Well, she's drawing it. That'd be like if there's a Miss L and a ball.
She's drawing it right now, so it's primary.
So what is it? Yes. You guys have your answers?
Yes.
Okay. What about the World War II picture? You think it's primary or secondary?
Why?
I think it's primary.
Look, we use these. We use the differences and the similarities.
I think it's primary.
Why do you think it's secondary?
I think it's primary.
Okay, and it has people in there from that time area, right? So if I take a picture, say for instance, I take a picture of, let's say,
So that one's taken back then, so.
okay, I'm taking a picture of World War II, during that time frame. I'm in that moment, in that time frame. So what do you think? Think about it now. I'm in that time frame. I'm there taking a picture. During World War
So that'd be
II.
like me thinking what you now.
So that means I have first hand, I can give you first hand information on that picture from the World War II. So if I give you first hand information, what do you think that's primary or secondary?
I got one wrong there too.
Because that picture was taken when?
At the time of the event.
At the time of the event. Thank you. All right, so that would make it what?
Primary.
Okay, so let's talk about drawing of native tribes. That's me. That's you drawing. Just drawing it out. That's you drawing it out.
Primary.
If you draw it out, remember, let's see.
So we don't think the second one. The second one's like the kid in Miss L's class.
This one right here.
So like they're drawing something they want there.
Okay, so you said drawing of a native tribe in Miss L's class. Let's Okay, I'm sorry, baby. So, secondary would be a record of events, one step removed, a layer of analysis, or he, she, they statement. So, this drawing was in the. It wasn't. Because guess what? Miss L probably could have drawn the picture herself. What if Miss L drew the picture herself?
Like if I had a camera that took a picture of the elevator and 1940.
So what would it be then if she drew that picture herself? Secondary, good job, good job, good job. So what you guys come up with?
A photo is always going to be yeah, but like the drawing, what do y'all think about it? I'm sorry. I was probably not too well.
Good job, good job.
So that'd be like
You guys have an excuse to go to get one. When you get to class, you're gonna have an excuse, I promise. Look, they're gonna give y'all an excuse to go. I promise.
alright, everyone raise your hand and look at me. Raise your hand and look at me. Alright, can y'all raise your hand and look at me real quick? Okay. So what did we decide? Who thinks the World War II photo was secondary? I think it's secondary.
It's primary.
Alright, why do y'all think it's primary? Right, so it's taken during that time, so that'll be an original artifact. Right, good job.
No, we said.
Alright. So did y'all hear them? They said that it's an original document because it was taken during that time. So that's going to be a primary source. Alright. So what do we think about the drawing of a native tribe in Miss Elf?
It's probably
I have it down for the time. Alright, any other reasons it's secondary?
I think it's primary.
Why do you think that?
Because it was written really.
But it wasn't created at the time, so it's going to be a step removed because they weren't. Yeah, so that one's going to be our secondary. Alright. So, what we were going to do with this one, I think we're running out of time. Right? So what y'all were going to do is you're going to go through all these pictures here and decide if they're primary or secondary. So I'm just going to really quick go through them and tell y'all. So this one's a textbook of U.S. history, primary, secondary.
Secondary.
Good job. All right. The second one's a documentary about the Industrial Revolution, primary, secondary. Good job. All right, and the next one's a newspaper about the moon landing. Y'all sure about that?
Secondary.
Newspapers are tricky, but they're most always going to be secondary unless the reporter was there. So the reporter wasn't on the moon, so that's secondary. Right, and this bottom picture is a picture drawn during the French Revolution about like the class system. So y'all think that's primary or secondary? It was drawn at the time. Primary. Right, and this one is a vase from the Egyptian period. So it was, well, it was made then. So is it going to be?
Primary.
Yeah, so it's going to be a primary source because it's original.
It could be both. You think it could be both, you guys?
Yeah. All right, and then the next one.
Look at the next page, you guys.
Yeah, we're going to flip to the second page. We got 5 more and we're done. So that first one is a diary entry from person in World War I. Are you sure about that?
Primary.
Because he wrote it. Yeah. All right. The one across, the I Am Malala, is an autobiography, so she wrote it about herself.
Primary.
Secondary.
It's primary because she wrote it about herself. All right, and this one under with Abraham Lincoln was wrote about Abraham Lincoln about 10 years ago. Secondary.
Record of events.
Right. And this one with the flag is a picture taken of when they're putting the flag up. Primary. And the last one is the Declaration of Independence. It's a real copy. Primary.
I go to
Sit
class.
down, don't nobody just sit down.
I'm trying to go to class. That's what I'm saying, what he said.
Because normally y'all don't want to leave this classroom.
Because we be damn.
How was you going, midterm?
All right, so just the last thing I want y'all to do, y'all don't have to do it, or I guess you do. Just turn to someone and tell them 3 things about a primary source or a secondary source. You can use your paper.
Turn to your partners.
I gotta go to the bathroom. Nope, shut up, bro. Shut up. Get back.
No, Sam.
All right, everyone look at me again. One more time. Look at me and raise your hand. All right, we're done. Thank y'all for letting me in here. I hope y'all learned something about primary and secondary sources. Do what you want with those papers. I recommend keeping them for any class you have, but thank y'all for letting me in here.
Good job. Keep your papers, please. I'm pretty sure you're going to need that for Mr. Collier